Welcome to the MS Dev Show, episode number 103. This week we talk with Jeff Blankenburg about magic wands and home automation, 10 SQL tricks that you didn't think were possible, Windows adds the best gesture ever, and is Apple a Microsoft OEM?
This episode of the MS Dev Show is brought to you by Infragistics, providing tools and solutions to accelerate design, development, insights, and collaboration for any organization.
This week we have Jeff Blankenburg. He is the founder of Stir Trek, the conference that sold out in 45 seconds. How's it going, Jeff?
Take that, Bill. How are you?
Yeah, take that build. Yeah, build. It was like 48 seconds, right?
Right, and our tickets are slightly more affordable at $75. So
yeah,
that makes a difference too.
Yeah, why don't you mention? I know we talked about this the last time you were on, but that was like 15 years ago. So mention what Stir Trek is again, because it's so cool.
Sure. So we had this idea way back when Microsoft had a conference called Mix, and I was working at Microsoft at the time and said, hey, we'd really like to do a Mix someplace else. And we reached out to them and they said, oh, that's great. You can do all the content. You can even invite some speakers, but you're not allowed to use the word mix at all. And so we came up with the name Stir Trek instead as a kind of a thumbing of the nose to mix. I didn't even know that. So the word, how do you protect the word mix? I mean, did they like trademark it? I don't know. Okay. I mean, I was a Microsoft employee, so I was trying to play nice.
I gotcha. Okay.
But so we held it in the movie theater. We wanted to do it on the day a big movie opened, have a conference, and then everybody gets to see the movie after. And this was the first J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie. That was the year that came out. And so we thought we'd change the name of the conference every year. You know, the next year was Iron Man 2, and we thought we'd do like Iron Mix or, whatever. We weren't sure what the names were going to be, but we thought we'd change it every year. And Star Trek was kind of popular, and the name just kind of stuck. So that's where it came from. We're in our 8th year now. We're doing the new Captain America Civil War movie this year. It's evolved into a really cool thing. We've got 1,600 people every year coming to have a full day of software development knowledge dropped on them. And we rent out eight of the movie theaters in a Cineplex. And now we send out loot crates as part of our registration boxes and all sorts of other stuff. So it's turned into a really fun event.
That is awesome. Yeah, we were chatting on Twitter, and I don't know, you started talking about magic wands and stuff. So I'm like, okay, we got to talk to Jeff again and see what he's up to.
Yeah.
So Carl, we have video now.
Yeah, we do. Last episode we actually just said, hey, let's try it, and it actually turned out pretty good. And added a lot of context, I think, because we talked a little bit. Our guest was actually talking on a phone that he had conferenced in, like an old handset style phone.
Yeah.
And you get to see that. So this time on this episode, hopefully we have at least an intro on there. So we have a little bit of a video intro now, at least something for the time being. And
it's worth checking out just for the video intro. Like the video intro is better than the show. Like just go watch that.
Jason had way too much fun making it. In fact, I was not in town, and he was like hitting me up constantly on Slack. How about this? How about this?
Yep. I went a little crazy.
Yeah, and we also are going to be posting these not only on Channel 9 like we have, but also on YouTube. So if you're into YouTube, you can actually subscribe to our channel there. We'll have a link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, I do love Channel 9, and I wanted to keep everything there, but honestly, like the subscribe options and stuff aren't the best because like everybody has YouTube on like everything. I watch a lot of YouTube like on my Roku, and being able to subscribe makes it so easy to see when the new content comes out. So I think it's just we're going where people are. So we'll continue to go on Channel 9, but we'll also be on YouTube. One thing I would ask for everybody, I know Carl said to subscribe, but please just go out there and subscribe. Let's try to bump those numbers up. Right now, I think we're at like 5, as of like the time that I'm speaking. Hopefully it's way higher whenever you go out there, but we need people to see that this is like, that YouTube part is legitimate because we haven't had years to build up that subscriber base. So just do us a favor, go out and do that. And then the other thing is you can obviously go out there and leave comments on the episodes, and hopefully they'll be better than standard YouTube comments. But that gives you another place. In fact, I think what we'll do, I guess it can't really be for the next episode. Well, in a future episode, for a couple episodes, what I'll do is I'll take the comments from YouTube, assuming we get any there. So if you want your comment to be seen, go there first, and then we'll start monitoring everything else again. Okay, who is our Infragistics Ultimate Winner of the Week?
This week, it's Joseph Woodward. He reached out to us on Twitter and said, after listening to the MS Dev show, I'm looking forward to having a play with Azure Functions tonight. And he's also going to be having a play with the Infragistics Ultimate license.
Yeah.
So if you want to get mentioned on the show like Joseph, send us an email to feedback@msdevshow.com, comment on Facebook, iTunes, Stitcher, and now YouTube.
Yep, exactly. Okay, so let's jump into the news. There's lots of stuff going on. So I know the first thing you have on here is Xamarin Evolve. Honestly, I haven't been watching that closely. So have you, Carl?
No, my week has been just taken up in
so
all sorts of things.
If you want terrible coverage of Xamarin Evolve, come here first, people. I've seen a couple tweets come out of it, so I guess I kind of apologize. I went out there and looked. I mean, they are revving like some of the versions of some of their things. They have like a beta of version 6 and a couple other cool things out there. And they did show off some of the things that were also announced at Build, like some of the new emulator for iOS and all that kind of stuff. So definitely check that out. The Xamarin stuff, with the .NET Core and all these other things going on is going to, I think the acceleration of how cool it is just going to really increase. And then for those who didn't hear, I mean, it's free now. There are still some paid services for things where they need hardware, like the test cloud and things like that. I think you still have to pay for, but Xamarin itself is free, and it even works with the free version of Visual Studio. So all that stuff is pretty cool. Okay, so then 10 SQL tricks that you didn't know were possible. What do you think of these ones, Carl?
So, I will say I definitely learned a bunch of things.
Yeah.
From here. Even things that I kind of maybe knew in the back of my head, but it just didn't hit me in the face. Like everything is a table.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the first one that there was, and thinking about it, it makes sense that everything in SQL is a table.
That's kind of how SQL works, right?
Yeah, it's exactly how it works. But then they just go on to do like some totally crazy things, like showing how SQL is Turing complete.
Yeah, they do like a Mandelbrot set, which was pretty cool. Yeah, and then there were things in here like just interesting problems, like the whole thing on Stack Overflow and on GitHub where they tell you like the number of consecutive times that you've logged in, or number of consecutive days that you've logged in, that kind of stuff. And then finding the length of a series. What else do they have in here? Subset problem with SQL, which was pretty cool.
And there's some things that I definitely knew that could be done in SQL, but I didn't realize like how difficult they are to do in like a standard programming language. So I think that's the other things. Definitely, there's always a right tool for the right job, and sometimes SQL is a very unique tool that we don't quite give it all the credit that it deserves.
Yeah. Cool. So check that out. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. What do we got next here? Microsoft's excellent Windows Phone keyboard is now available for iOS.
Yeah.
Have you installed this?
Yes, I have installed this. So this was one that I was excited about, and I actually, so it's the new WordFlow keyboard. So where you can just drag your finger around and it'll, dynamically put the word together for you. Yep. And a few weeks ago, Microsoft released another keyboard, and I thought that this was the one that was released back then.
Yeah,
and then I actually installed it. I was like, oh, I'm confused. How did that happen? How many keyboards are they working on? But this one is vastly superior to the iOS keyboard, even considering that keyboards, third-party keyboards, are a little wonky on iOS. Yeah. This still is way better, just for the, like I said, having that that kind of word flow aspect to it, as well as the word predictions and word corrections. They do a lot better job. And
the one-handed mode, which is pretty freaking amazing. You push the one button and the keyboard goes like curved, and you can use one hand with your phone, and it works amazingly well. Yeah. So Jeff, what kind of phone do you have now?
I'm currently holding a iPhone 6.
Okay. Yeah, so make sure you get the WordFlow keyboard. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I got it yesterday. I'm pretty impressed.
Oh, okay.
I was obviously a huge fan of Windows Phone for a long time.
Yep.
And their keyboard is still the best in my opinion.
It is. And I've explained this before on the show, but I started out, well, I didn't start out on iPhone, but like I had iPhone for a couple of years, and then I switched over to Windows Phone. And it was funny because Carl was always telling me how great the keyboard was. And it was interesting because I didn't really like feel it. It was something that it didn't really feel like it was getting better. And I used the Windows Phone keyboard for a long time. And then I tried to use the iPhone keyboard again. And then I realized how bad it was. So it was like going from high definition to standard definition. I'm like, okay, I cannot watch anybody's standard definition TV now.
Oh, it's painful.
Yeah. So it's like that kind of experience. So once you get used to that keyboard. Now the only frustrating thing, and this makes sense, Apple, like anytime you have to enter a password or anything, they switch back to the default keyboard. So it's not like fully integrated, but anytime you need to type like a paragraph or sentences, this thing is far superior.
Now, do you think that there's a security reason for the default keyboard? Like, do you think that there are people that could write keyboards that could inject or record?
Absolutely. So there's an option in there for like full control, but I know that the keyboards themselves can go to the internet, right? Because there's like that whole like Jiffy keyboard where you can type in a word, or you type in something and it like searches Jiffy and gives you a GIF that you can paste in. So it's clearly like as you're typing, it's doing that. Plus, iOS warns you whenever you install a third-party keyboard. It says, "Hey, this can read whatever you're typing." And the only time that would be a concern is if it could send it somewhere. So yeah, I mean, you could, I could make Jason's keylogger keyboard and give it to all my friends. So yeah, I'm 99%.
So that's what it does?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But by default, you can turn it off though. It's opt out. No, so I think that's Apple's concern, and that's good, I guess. I mean, it's nothing against like the Microsoft one, but other keyboards, yeah, I'm leery, especially some company you've never heard of that they're not just sending back everything you type. So I'm glad it's not passwords, but I mean that's still not foolproof either.
Right.
Okay, Windows subsystem for Linux overview. So we did talk about this in our build episode, but this is some of the technical details. And there's also a video in here which I actually recommend watching. So this is pretty cool. I mean, we have talked about it before, how you can run Linux commands on there, but watching the video too, you can hear some of the advantages of doing this. Things like we've had a lot of internal discussion about this, things like Python and Ruby and things like that. They just don't work well in Windows, and it's not necessarily Windows' fault. It's the people that are writing these are not using Windows, so then somebody has to come in and sort of port them, and there are things missing or different, and it just happens. And Node.js was in that camp at one point. Like it took an effort to get it to run on Windows, and now it runs great on Windows. But anyway, I mean, this was just an awesome stopgap to make it so you can run all of this Linux stuff. And it's all the Linux native binaries, and they explain how those calls actually take place. So it's really amazing. And this is just the technical details behind that.
Cool.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, like, what do you guys, I think you and I had talked about it, Carl, but are you excited about this, Jeff?
I have never been much of a Linux ecosystem guy at all.
Me neither. But
so I appreciate the value that this brings, but I haven't had an opportunity to dive in and see how it really benefits me.
Yeah, I think it's pretty huge. Because for that kind of stuff, and I actually wonder, like long term, what could happen there. So like Node.js had to do all special work to support Windows. Like, could that go away? Could it just be sort of uniform because it's hitting against that Linux surface area, and that's just available everywhere? Because even on OS 10, I know it's Unix and some of those things are different, but maybe it simplifies things. But this was pretty much the only way that you could, fix all of the gaps in the developer experience for these open source tools. And it happened like overnight. So that's why I'm excited about it. The web is doom. So the average web page is now the size of the Doom install image. And to put that in perspective, I remember Doom, I want to say if I'm not mixing it with Wolfenstein, it was on I think like 5 floppies. and you'd have to put in, you had like that like red bar, and then it'd be like insert next disk.
Yep.
Like you had to install it that way. So, there was a point in my life where that seemed like just massive, right? I mean, only a piece of it would fit on a floppy disk. Now your average web page is that big. So what does that mean?
I think that's bad.
Yeah.
Because we talk so much about accessibility and all these other things on the web to make sure that we're using standards and that screen readers and all this other stuff can work, but we're forgetting about all the people that don't have the broadband speeds we have. Yep. And I was just talking with a guy at a major bank today at lunch, and he was saying that they're revving their entire like homepage where consumers would come to do their banking, and that the designers gave them a series of images. It's all geolocated based imagery, so depending on what city you're in, you might see San Francisco or Seattle or whatever. But each image is like 800K. just the image that is the background of the rest of the content, right? And I was like, man, we're pushing meg images through the pipe for these people. That's too much. We're forgetting about people, right? Just to go check my checking account balance, right?
Yeah.
That's remarkable to me. And I remember, way back when I was a kid, really just starting to get into web development. I mean, the idea that an entire web page was 100K that's unacceptable.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because that's like, you're sitting there with your modem and, that's insane. But you used to be able to watch web pages render.
Yeah, absolutely. But now, now we have JavaScript libraries that are bigger than that. Which seems wrong.
Which is a tough one because, if you are using a CDN, then theoretically, you could see those as sort of an operating system that follows you along. Mm-hmm. I mean, like we don't care like how big Chrome is, right? How big your browser is. Right. Some of those libraries, like if we take the Angular JavaScript libraries, I mean, you only have to download them one time. So that just kind of throws a wrench into it. It's not that they can be any size that they want, but it makes it a little more challenging because I mean, on my site, I don't think I have many libraries coming in, but you take your average site and they might be using a CDN and the actual data you're downloading might only be 100K. Who knows?
Yeah.
Actually, the most interesting observation here, I think it was in the comments, was that this is linear growth. Isn't that kind of interesting? It's not exponential growth. Like everything in computers is exponential, but the size of web pages is linear.
Yeah.
So whenever you're, and I don't know what the graph for broadband looks like. I should have done homework and actually looked that up. But I'm curious, like if our communication technologies, if they are going exponential, then the linear growth is actually amazingly good because
we're holding ourselves back.
Yeah, it's going to get less and less important.
Yeah, but I mean, some of this is, we do spend a lot of time micro optimizing certain aspects of our web pages using CDNs and stuff like that. But then we do that at the cost of throwing in like all these ad networks or like you said, those hero images that change based upon your location and time of day. And it's like, there definitely is a balancing point. And I think that's what's keeping it a little bit more linear as well. But, it's like, like Jeff was saying, where do we, optimize for this is what looks best if you have the best internet versus, hey, I could be maybe not even in another part of the world. I could just be in the woods on my cell phone and not get that great of cell reception. Now I'm sitting there, I might need to do that banking transaction for some reason. I might need to move some money so, I don't get a bad credit report because I don't have enough in the right account. And I'm sitting there not being able to connect because I'm waiting on 10 gigs of images.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. I think we do a good job of measuring responsiveness for the size of your browser and use all the CSS we can to make sure that it's optimized for your screen. But I don't think many places are taking into consideration how fast your connection is. And they're just pushing whatever they have through the pipe based on your browser requirement.
I think if you there's a it's in the spec, you can use the what the heck is it? This is that my terrible HTML knowledge is coming through, but there's like an image source set or something. And I know you can use that for like the high DPI graphics and that. And I think you can, I mean, the browser could obviously take that into account and request a lower res version as well. So we have a technical standard to solve that problem. And I'm guessing it is used occasionally, probably not as much as we'd like.
I hope it is, but I'm guessing probably not.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't use it, right?
Right.
I just at this point, I mean, I just take advantage of the fact that most connections are fast. I just throw like the highest res picture in there, which back in the modem days, I just scolded people for. I was like, hey, when you do resize, you don't do it in HTML. You do it, locally, and you optimize the image, and then you use that version. And now you sort of want to do the opposite because of all these high DPI displays, or use that image source set, which is way better to do it anyway. But yeah, I mean, if you look at like a decade ago, or maybe even more than that, I don't know, people, I'm sure you've heard this, like content is king. And it just seems like we forget that like every few years. We go into this cycle where it's just like, oh, wow, look at this like really cool stuff we can do. Because originally it was like the Photoshop thing where you'd like slice it up and then build your page based on that Photoshop mockup. And now it's like, yeah, the hero image is like another iteration of that, or like hero images on like each post. And like, it's just gotten out of hand. And it's like, just content is key. Like if the hero image is not going to fix your content.
No.
Yeah. So, just everybody just needs to keep that in mind. Just like have good content, keep it simple and everything. I think we've talked about this in the show before too, from different aspects, but like if it's not needed, just get rid of it and your life will be much better. Okay, here. Tons of new features in Windows 10 Insider Build, including the best gesture ever. And when I saw the best gesture ever, I was like, please be the swipe for desktops. Please be the swipe for desktops. And I clicked on like, yes, finally. So OS 10 has this, and it's like, it is one of the greatest OS 10 features ever. And it's such a simple thing. You can just swipe with 3 fingers on OS 10. I've heard people say 4, but you can do it with 3 on OS 10 to switch between virtual desktops. It totally makes virtual desktops useful. And I would say that one screen, like with OS 10 it's like 90% as good as having 2 monitors because I can switch back and forth so quick. And you get so used to it and paired with the trackpad. It's just amazing. It's the greatest thing ever. So when Windows 10 added multiple desktops, I was like, yes, okay, finally. Like I'm going to be like so much more productive. And I go in there and there's no gesture for it. You have to hit like control left, right or something, which is no, never.
Right.
It's just never going to happen. But like on a mobile device is where I want it. And I don't know. It's not going to work. So they finally added it. It's 4 fingers and it has like some special requirements about machines you can use it on. Cause I don't want to get like all these false positives and stuff, but yeah, it's in the latest Insider Build. I haven't tried it yet on the trackpad, but this is awesome. This was one of the gaps, and it's finally being filled.
In fact, we had complained about it loudly this past December in our 3+3 random topics episode. So
yeah, yeah, exactly. And what's crazy is that we had talked about like some of the things that we liked and hated about OS 10, and then also about Windows. And if in this is totally my opinion, but if you look, because there were things that I wanted in Windows. I'm like, we can close. I don't want to call it a gap because the gap was like on both sides, right? But it's like these things are just like obviously missing from Windows. Some of the other things were like the notification syncing. So that was announced at Build. We got the gestures. It's like the list of things that's in OS 10 that I wish were in Windows is like extremely short now. Like I can't really think of anything major offhand.
There was another really big one for me. It has since been fixed, but I've been on a Mac for the last year at this startup that I've been working at, and I fell in love with the fact that I can do all of my texting directly from the desktop.
Yeah, that's mobile integration. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I had never seen that in Windows before, and I was telling a friend of mine, I was like, this is almost like game changing because I don't have to take my phone out of my pocket. That is big.
The other cool thing is that it'll even work on Android, not just with Windows Phone as well.
Windows,
so that's amazing.
That's very, very cool. But when I heard that it works in Windows, I was like, all right, cool. I'm on my way back.
Exactly. That's such a good way of putting it. I mean, I still use a Mac. I mean, I use a PC 90% of the time. Mm-hmm. But like even when I'm at home, you're like the Mac is sitting next to me, and honestly, somebody texts me, I text them back from the Mac.
Yeah.
Just because it's easier. But if I can have that across all my devices, and that's awesome. Which actually brings us into our next story. Good segue. Who's this guy? Apple is a Microsoft OEM. So this was actually my blog post. So backstory, I had, I don't know how much of a backstory you want, because I drank 2 cups of coffee, and I don't know, I seem to be like extremely caffeine sensitive. I normally just have 1 cup, and I had 2 that morning, and that keeps me up at night. So I actually wrote this at like 3 a.m. I just woke up and I couldn't sleep. I'm like, I got to type this thing out. So I typed it up. So the general gist is, we've talked about Macs on here a couple times, and like you said, that 3+3 episode, we sort of went over some of this stuff, but I have to keep having this conversation. So I'm going to type this thing up. And it is just so funny when I am in a meeting with, partners and other Microsoft people, and they go, because my laptop is a Mac, and I do have a Surface Pro 3, and I usually like alternate between them. It sort of depends what I'm trying to do. But they'll be like, "You have a Mac? That's crazy. Like, you can't do that. That's like anti-Microsoft." And every time I have to explain this, I'm like, okay, well, you have an HP, you have a Dell, you have a Lenovo. Which of those are made by Microsoft?
Right.
And they're just like, oh, well, that's not quite the same thing. It's like, well, how so? Because I know, and this is not like inside information, like, you can go out there and find, like, people talk about like how much Microsoft actually makes whenever you buy, like a Dell. Microsoft only gets like a tiny piece of that. The reality is I'm running Windows on my Mac as well. And like, if you normally do that, I mean, you have to go out there and buy a full Windows license. Plus I have Office 365 on there, VS Code. I mean, we've talked about this before, all the cool things on there. But the way I see it, Apple is just another OEM, and I really don't see how they're a competitor in any way. I mean, it's not like, I don't know. I don't see how they're a competitor at all.
Infragistics Ultimate UX and UI tools and enterprise mobility solutions, Share Plus and Report Plus, enable high-performance apps on any device, faster data insights, simplified collaboration, and market-leading security, all backed by comprehensive support. With Infragistics Ultimate UX and UI Development Toolkit, you can ensure mission-critical applications delivering a superior user experience on the desktop, web, and native device environments for iOS and Android. With the latest BI tools, wow your users with dashboards providing the data insights that they need when and where they need it, all at a low total cost of ownership. Try it today. Download a free trial at Infragistics.com and follow them for the latest updates in UX and UI development, reporting, and collaboration at Infragistics on Twitter. And remember, each week, if we pick your comment on the show, you will get a free copy of Infragistics Ultimate UX and UI Toolset.
So I had to get that out there. And then I sort of ended it with, when I bring my Mac into a meeting, I'm developing my next Azure application in Visual Studio Code, reading my email and Outlook, and creating spreadsheets in Excel. I no longer understand why my Apple laptop running all Microsoft software is all that interesting. So, and then use what you like. Remember, the world has changed. That being said, I got the new Surface Pro 4 type cover for my Surface Pro 3. Oh my God, is that thing so much better?
It is way better. I got that immediately when they announced it, and it's 90% of your upgrade from a Surface Pro 3 to a Surface Pro 4.
Yeah, don't even buy the Surface Pro 4. Just get the keyboard, and you're pretty much there. The trackpad is better. The keyboard is a billion times better. So,
all right, that's a good tip. I'm rocking the Surface Pro 3 right now with the original keyboard.
Go get the new one, man.
Sounds like I gotta go shopping.
It's night and day difference.
Yeah. Like, I don't know what to do with my old, my daughter played with it for a while, and I have a hard time throwing away something that was like over $100, but
right.
Like, what am I supposed to do with that old keyboard now? I mean, I'm not even gonna keep it as a backup. If I break this keyboard, I'm going to go buy another of the new one. Right. I mean, it's that good. And then, of course, in the comment section on my post, I had all these people. To be fair, Windows is complete trash. Like, what?
That's not really being fair.
It is totally not being fair. Like, I really don't understand that. Like, I can understand having like a bad experience, but like to say Windows is trash, again, I use it 90% of the time. I rebooted today because I had this weird application issue, and I haven't rebooted in like 45 days. It's just ridiculous. Like, ridiculously stable, fast, and I mean, there's very few features that I want that are not there. So I just don't get it. If you think Windows is complete trash, like, just go give it another try. I don't get that.
No, I think it's crazy.
Anyway, okay. So let's talk to you, Jeff. Let's see what you have to offer on the show here. So let's start with this whole like magic wand thing, because that really got me curious. Because I think what you're talking about, like if you go to what is it, like Great Wolf Lodge, they always have this Magi quest.
Am I thinking
of the same thing?
I haven't been to a Great Wolf Lodge, but where my adventure started was actually at Universal Studios in Florida. They just opened a brand new Harry Potter park, and so they have two theme parks there, and there's a Harry Potter area at each of them. And we went there, I don't know, 4 years ago, and we took our kids, and you could buy magic wands, but they were just replica wands. You could get the ones that look like all the different characters from the movies. But when we went there this time, it was basically like a $7 upgrade. Instead of $39, they were $46 or something outrageous. And you're still paying for a molded piece of plastic. But it comes in a nice box, and you get an experience and all that stuff. So anyway, you get these interactive wands, and what they allow you to do is go through both of the parks, and they have these little metal plates in the brickwork around the park, and you can take your wand out, and if you do the gesture that is on the plate in front of you, then something interactive happens right in front of you, right in a store window, or a cauldron will tip over, or whatever. And it really intrigued me as a technology guy. Like, well, I wonder how that works. Does this thing have a battery in it? Because they kept saying
it's magic.
It absolutely is magic. But I wanted to know how it worked, because it seemed like they said if it ever stops working, come back and we'll repair it, or we'll replace it or whatever, but we'll make sure that it continues to work. And I thought, man, there's got to be are they really molding a battery right into this? Because there's no compartment on the wand or any place that you could really fit anything in there. And so the kids had a great time. And when we got home, I was like, man, this is terrible. Like, I bought this cool wand, and my kids have it, but now that they've left the park, we live in Ohio. That's kind of not that close. We don't go visit the parks that regularly. They don't do anything. And I thought that was terrible. So I was trying to figure out how could we, use these in other ways to do other cool stuff. And so I haven't gotten that deep into it, but what I found out was the wands actually have nothing exciting, and there's no electronics or anything in them at all. What they have is a little plastic tip, a little reflective plastic tip that reflects infrared light. And so when you go up and stand in front of those plates, they're shining infrared light on you. And then they have a camera that's actually in the display. And so when you wave your wand, it can see the infrared tip of your wand just light up, because it's reflecting that light back to the camera. And it reminded me very quickly of how Kinect works. And I thought, ooh, I wonder if I could do something cool with that. And so I sat down, a couple of days after we got home from Universal, and I ripped my Kinect out of where my kids play with it, and I brought it into my office.
There was crying.
Right, Daddy's working. That's just. And I set up the Kinect, and I was just displaying what the Kinect was seeing, and as soon as I held the wand up and pointed at the Kinect, it was like this beam of white light just shining off the tip of this thing. It looked like I had a magic wand in my hand, and I just thought that was absolutely amazing. So. My thought was, and I've kind of put a plan together, but I haven't executed it yet, is to try and build something that would allow people to interpret other gestures, or even to interpret those same kind of wand gestures that they have in the park, to do all the spells that you have in the Harry Potter books. Because one of the things that I think is a big miss for Universal in all of this is, why not partner with like Barnes & Noble or other places kids are going to go buy these books? And let them bring their wands to the stores and have a display there where they could do anything that they could do with these wands above and beyond the parks. I think would be a huge, huge win. You could even do it in movie theaters. Just a little standalone display that has this kind of stuff sitting in it.
You could even add voice recognition, so you could do like the spells.
Yep. So I mean, I think that there's a big opportunity there. But it's not like Disney, where Disney has their own stores, and it would be very easy for them to kind of roll a thing out. Universal doesn't have that kind of retail presence, and so they'd have to do some kind of neat partnership. But I think, especially with a new Harry Potter movie coming out soon, and some of the other things that they're doing with these parks, I know they're opening one in Hollywood now. I think that there's an opportunity to really kind of blow this out. How cool would it be for your kids to dress up like Harry Potter, go to the mall or go to their local Barnes & Noble and be able to do some cool stuff while they're picking up the newest book or whatever it may be.
Okay.
So, as part of that whole like Kinect and detecting gestures, have you ever looked into Carl Franklin's GitHub page? He's got a Kinect gesture pack.
Well, you know what? That's actually where I started. So
okay.
I started taking his stuff apart. And as you just heard me cough, I have been incredibly sick for about the last 8 weeks with bronchitis and all sorts of other nastiness. And so I haven't had a lot of opportunity to really dig my heels into all of this. But it's still on my list. I have a plan on what I want to try to accomplish. I think the real challenge will be how far can I take it? Because at some point, if I wanted to sell this or market it to places like Barnes and Noble, I'd imagine Universal is going to step in and be like, "Wait, what? What are you doing?" Excuse me.
I don't think they have a patent on it. So what I was mentioning earlier was this Magi quest, and I think they're paired with like Great Wolf Lodge. They're always like next to it or in them. And I took my kids to this, and I was just blown away. If you ever have a chance to go to one of these things, it's insane. Have you ever been to one, Carl?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you have to take your kids. This is like the greatest.
I haven't even heard of it.
Yeah. So my son, he's like, we got to do that. I'm like, I don't know what this is. It sounds stupid. So you go in there and you buy the wand, just like you're talking about, Jeff. And I was looking at the tip and I was like, what the heck is this? Right. And now that you mention it, I think it is an infrared. I think in their case, I thought it was an emitter because I think there's a battery compartment on this one, but I could totally be wrong. Now, that being said, what you do is like right when you buy it, they have a thing there. They're like, oh, to make sure it works, like wave it at the cauldron and it starts like steaming or something. And then this was like a huge building, it was 3 stories tall, and you go on a quest. So you start with this giant tree and you walk up to it and you wave the wand and it starts playing and it says, like, which quest would you like to go on? You pick the quest that you want to go on. And then it gives you clues. It's like, oh, visit the fairy princess, and she'll give you some instructions. So you walk around and you find like the princess, and they'll have like giant screens and stuff, right? And you walk up and you do it, and she's like, oh, well, you need 3 ingredients for this spell. And then you end up like walking up to paintings, and like the paintings move. There's like stairs and elevators, and there's like stuff you have to climb through, and there's like a forest. There's all these different like environments that you go into, but everything is activated with that wand. And it's just amazing. And then you can also collect different power-ups, by, you see one and you can, shoot the wand at it. And some of them have to be stacked, so you have to get them in a certain order. We were there like 4 hours and we did like 10% of it. Yeah. I mean, you could, depending on what age your kid, if your kids are on like, 10, plus or minus like 2 or 3 years, like they might want to stay there for like 6 to 8 hours and then also go back. It's crazy. Like if we're ever near one again, like they will go in for hours. Even my 4-year-old, I think she was 3 at the time. She was good for like 2 or 3 hours. Just playing around on stuff. And then I was even running around trying to find stuff. So I don't know. It's kind of like I don't want to say it's a well-kept secret because I mean, there were plenty of people there, but the whole thing was sort of magic to me. So they, like the technology is there, but you're totally right. Like they just keep it within the confines of this building. Right. If you can take it outside of that building and bring it into a store and do some cross promotions, that could be pretty powerful.
Yeah, and so where that led me was thinking about how I could get the kids. I started playing with some home automation stuff, and I don't mean to segue if we want to stay on this, but I thought it would be cool for the kids to be able to walk around the house, wave a wand, and turn a light off, right? Which is a thing my children have never done in the history of their lives, which is actually turn a light off. But I thought if they had their magic wands, man, that would be super cool. Or if they're laying in bed, they could just wave their wand and boom, it turns the light off in the room. I haven't gotten that far, but it really wouldn't be that difficult looking at kind of some of the things that I've gotten into related to that.
Yeah. So you said that it's a reflector. So you basically need an IR emitter and then you need a sensor and then it will basically reflect it back.
Yep. But that is what a Connect is. So Connect makes it very, very simple. Otherwise, you've got to come up with.
Well, I guess the difference in my mind is Connect has like a very, I don't want to say expensive, but I'm going to use that word, expensive sensor that can look at the entire room. Yeah. I'm wondering, like, can you scale that down and just get like, just a signal that says like, oh, hey, I just saw some infrared from somewhere.
So that's another option I looked at. You remember there used to be banner ads all the time for something called X10. Yep. It was a camera system in your house. So those cameras have a ring of infrared lights around them so they can do night vision. Yep. Those would really be the same thing. The difference is that now you've got to take that video feed and interpret somehow sitting on top of something else where you can actually take a lot of the data that Connect generates and instantly act on it. You'd have to take, those X10 cameras are cheap. They're $10, $12.
That's a good point. Even all my security cameras do that.
Yeah, but then you have to interpret it and understand what it was and where did it move and that kind of stuff. So there's a trade-off. I think that if you could write the software to do it, you're a very brilliant developer, because I think that's some really hard problems to solve.
Visual, like real-time visual processing. Yeah.
Yeah. But for the price of a Kinect, which is, it's $100, you could even use the V1 Kinect. I think that those kinds of things would really do pretty well. But again, it's not something you're going to put in every room because you're going to just rack up cost, and Kinects aren't that pretty to put on every surface.
Or you configure like a Kinect for the entire room, because I keep thinking of the light switch scenario, but honestly, like one Kinect can cover your whole room. There's if you go to the Microsoft campus, they have different examples of this in different places. If you're in building 33, which is like the executive briefing center, as you walk down, like they look like they're pictures, but they're actually TV screens, and they change as you walk down, which is cool. But then in building 16, whenever you're in there and you walk up the stairs for the second floor out of the lobby, as you're moving, like there's like leaves like kind of rustling around, and like this music plays. And I didn't even realize it until somebody pointed out, they're like, look up, and there's a Kinect like in the middle of the ceiling looking down. Yeah. And they figured it so like it knows who's there, how many people are there, and then based on the movement, it actually changes the ambient sound. So if you were like a group of 10 people, like it's really loud and changes, and
that's very cool.
Yeah. So I mean, like right there, you already have all this other ability, but yeah, you could pair that. Now the wand is fully enabled for the entire room.
Yeah. I just think it's neat, and I as I left Universal, I really felt like there was a missed opportunity there to really blow out what those wands could do, because every kid that goes to Universal is going to want one of these things, but once they go home, it's just going to sit in a box and collect dust.
Yep. So actually, one other idea for you. Sorry, I'm going to keep like spewing out ideas here.
Sure.
But I wonder, there's really no reason why the IR reflector only has to be at the top. I mean, I don't. If you actually had like IR, I don't want to say tape, but like if it was IR reflective across the entire wand, then you could actually get a better idea of orientation and those types of things. Because as it is, right, you can only see the tip.
Yep.
With IR, so it would be kind of neat to make the whole thing like have like IR strips on it or something.
Fully reflective, yeah.
Fully reflective, so you can get full orientation and all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I looked at playing with the idea of the sensor bar from a Wii as well. Because that solves a similar problem. But again, the interpretation, the fact that I already have an ecosystem and an API directly into a Kinect that I can just plug into any PC, makes it a really appealing device. Wii doesn't offer that, and certainly like those X10 cameras don't.
The interesting thing about the sensor bar on the Wii is it's not a sensor bar, right?
Yes, it's actually the reflector.
Yeah. It's actually just two IR lights. That's all it is. And in fact, if you take two candles and you put them at the right positions, you could actually use that instead of the emitter.
That's very funny.
And actually, the problem that I had, the reason that I'm very familiar with this is in my old basement, we had these lights and they had a certain spacing and they were kind of far behind us. And it would actually, you could point the Wii controller at a set of lights and you could use it. So you could actually point the Wii remote in any direction. It would still work, except it caused all kinds of interference. And then the other thing was we had a Christmas tree that was right next to the TV with LED lights, and it would pick all those up as if they were the Wii. So it was the Wii U, the Wii remote was completely useless in our basement because of that.
That's funny.
Yeah. So anyway, let's talk home automation.
I just want to toss one little idea. I've been kind of researching this on the side. So you're talking about it would take like a really smart person to kind of put some of that stuff together to like if you were to reuse that wand. Well, I remembered OpenCV, and that's the Open Computer Vision project. And what's really cool with that is you can use that project to actually kind of like phase out the entire background. So you would just see, since you're that IR reflection is so bright, so you could actually convert that image or a series of images that you have into a standard gesture that the Windows platform will recognize, and you can actually you can create an event off of that. So
that's awesome. I hadn't heard of that one.
Yeah. So
Carl's you're a smart person.
Awesome.
No, I'm not the smart guy. I just read about the article.
Carl can read. Okay.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay. So now can we talk home automation?
Yeah. Let's talk about home automation.
Okay. So let's talk home automation, Jeff.
All right. So in doing what I was doing with the wand, I was trying to think about how would I rig that up? How would I get the kids to be able to turn a light on or off? And so I started buying some parts and pieces and playing with the the ecosystem that's out there. And so I bought an Amazon Echo when it first came out, and I have been since then trying to sell it to my wife as a thing we should have purchased, because I'm quick to do that. I'm quick to adopt something and try it out and be like, oh, that wasn't very cool, and then it ends up in a drawer or whatever.
Yeah.
But it brought enough value initially out of the box to be able to be like the speaker in the kitchen. So if you just want to turn on some music, it was great for like recipes and stuff like that. And then you could always easily check the weather or whatever. But it was not $179 awesome, which is a statement my wife used a couple of times. So I was like, well, wait, I know we can do more with this because it has all these voice commands, and I know that it ties into if this then that. So let me see what kind of other kind of cool stuff I could do. And so I started rigging it up to if this and that, but there was nothing like I always feel with things like if this and that we're so close to cool, but yet not really there. A good example is being able to set up recipes. Everything is one this and one that, and that's it. Yeah. And there are a lot of times where I want the outside lights on my house to turn on at sunset, but not if it's raining, or maybe if it's raining, things like that. And to add any of those kind of like if statements or conditionals just isn't possible with that kind of system. And so I played a little bit with it, but there was nothing terribly interesting I could do. I could send some notifications to my phone, but it was pretty basic. And so I said, well, let me, one of the things that I'd really like to be able to do is turn lights on and off. So like you can say, Alexa, trigger good night. And what that lets me to do is turn off all of the lights in the house. Now, assuming I had them all hooked up. But that's something that's compelling. Now, when I get into bed, I'm like, oh, I forgot to turn the kitchen light off. Rather than having to go get up and get downstairs and go turn the light off, I can just say, Alexa, trigger good night, and boom, all the lights in the house turn off. That was a cooler one for her because we have a couple lights in this house that we never remember to turn off. And so every time it's right after you've gotten comfortable and you're like, all right, starting to drift, and she's like, oh, that light's on.
So what are you actually controlling the lights with?
Okay, so that's a good question. So I bought some hardware from Belkin. They have a series called Wemo, and they make several different devices. They make a light switch, which is honestly you're going to unwire and rewire this new light switch into your house. They make an outlet switch, which is basically just a plug that sits on top of a plug, but has all the smarts in it to talk to your Wi-Fi and everything like that. They have smart light bulbs and things like that. And then they have one other piece, which I'll talk about in a second, called Wemo Maker. And it's basically just the guts, but it has contacts so that you can talk to low-power devices like your garage door. So those kinds of things, I have picked up at least one of each. In fact, my office that I'm sitting in right now, I have just a standard light switch across the room, but I have a couple of the bulbs in the lamp above me. And there's good and bad to this, right? It's nice. My office is one of the places where we never remember to turn the lights off, but it's right at the bottom of the stairs, so it shines up and illuminates the whole upstairs. It's nice to be able to turn those bulbs off. The problem is if everybody participates in the home automation ecosystem, it's perfect. Everybody goes into the app. Anybody can do it via voice.
Unless
Alexa.
they turn off the switch.
Right. But my wife does not care at all about any of this technology stuff. And so she just walks in and turns the light switch off, at which point there's no power running to anything, which means none of it
just works. Disabled my home automation.
Right. I've been foiled so easily by a light switch. So the bulbs on their own, I think, are not a great story because if the light switch gets turned off, you're just stuck. In the same way with I have one of the outlet covers, they're just the outlet switch, and if I have a lamp plugged into it. The problem being that my wife will just go over and turn the knob on the lamp, and now you can't do anything with that. And I had a friend come over, and I was like, oh, check this out. And I went over to the Echo, and I said, Alexa, trigger the orange lamp. And she did. She goes, okay, I'm sending the command. And then I heard the box click because it has a little audible noise when it happens, and nothing happened. And I was like... Why?
Welcome to the future.
Right. And it was because we turned the lamp off the way lamps have been turned off for a century. So
Yeah.
So there's good and bad to it, but it has become kind of a neat experience. There's still limitations, I think, to a lot of this stuff. There's still very, very simple, pretty dumb devices, and there aren't a lot of API hooks like I hope that there would be. But there's enough so that if this then that can do a whole bunch of things with these Wemo devices. From being able to turn them on and off, I can make lights blink. One of the things that I'm working on right now is trying to figure out a data source that I can use that can recognize when my sports teams win. There is an ESPN plugin for if this then that, but it only lets you know when your team's game ended, but it does not indicate to you at all if your team won.
Well, how good are you at picking teams?
Well, so I grew up in Cleveland, and so my teams don't win that often.
Well, there you go.
I was thinking with with the Cleveland Browns, my NFL team, if I could set it up so that the lamp in my family room blinks every time the Browns scored a touchdown or every time they won a game.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Right. I mean, I think that would be really cool, and it's not a major endeavor. It's just that the data sources aren't really there, and if this then that as a service doesn't really provide a way
to pay for.
Yeah, getting access to that kind of data is pretty tricky, and I've dabbled in sports data stuff in the past, and it's very, very expensive to try and get access to that without just screen scraping or doing something a little less reputable.
So yeah, and then getting back to like your office there, I mean, so the logical way to solve your problem is to put in a switch, which of course the problem is that switches oftentimes, instead of thinking of it as a light switch, think of it as a circuit interrupter, right? All it's doing is like allowing power to flow or not flow. So the shortcut that people will often take is to make it so that that's just the hot wire or the ground wire. I actually, I'd have to look up which is preferable, but you basically just interrupt that one wire. So you actually don't have the other wire even existing in there. So, you're not even able to complete a circuit. So you can't power a switch. And even if you could power a switch, then the issue becomes, okay, well, now I got 120 volts. How the heck do I get that to something that's not going to kill my user that's, right on the other side of the switch, which means you need a transformer. And that's just, that's horrible because transformers equal heat and inefficiency. Or you put a battery in there and then you got to change the battery. Like there's all sorts of issues.
Right.
Like I was hoping that we would, I was hoping in the year 2016 here, we'd be at a point where we had solved this somehow. I'm crossing my fingers that one day we'll have like DC in the home, and then and these switches will be maybe like a 25% premium over dumb switches, and everybody will just say I'm just going to put those in instead, and then even if they don't use them, they'll be ready to do this kind of stuff. But like we're no better off than in like 1980 at this point.
No, thankfully the setup for these is pretty easy. But I look at like installing the actual smart light switch. I had to go down, turn the power off, and I had to wire it all up. Then I had to go down, turn the power back on, back up, and configure it to set up to the Wi-Fi. Then once I did that, I didn't want to wire it all into the wall yet. So now I had to go back down, turn the power off, came back up, shoved everything into the wall, screwed everything into place, went back down, turned the power, and came upstairs. Nothing was working. I'm just tearing my hair out. Like it was working before I put it in the wall.
Yeah.
And when you look at it, the stock light switch that you can buy at Home Depot is a nickel, right? It costs practically nothing.
Yeah.
And these switches with all the smarts and Wi-Fi and everything else, because they have to produce their own Wi-Fi signal. You connect to that with your phone. You give it your home Wi-Fi credentials, and then it starts using that. And so there's a lot of parts inside these things, and I think it costs $40 for one light switch. I can't afford to put that in every light switch in my house. And they don't even work. They don't even work as three ways. So if you have anything in your house where more than one light switch controls it, these don't work there.
Yeah.
And I have that all. My kitchen, my bedroom. There's lots of places where I have a three-way switch. So that's a downside too. I think they're working on it, but that's a harder problem. I think because these light switches need to be able to communicate with each other and understand when one's on or when one's off or whatever.
And Wi-Fi is congested enough. Like hopefully there's not a congestion issue there, and then hopefully it's not going out to the cloud and trying to round trip every time as well. Hopefully it's smart and can cache them out locally, but I definitely wouldn't cross my fingers. So have you looked at smart things at all?
You know what? I looked at smart things and I looked at Wemo, and I felt for the cost, Wemo was the superior ecosystem choice, at least at the time.
Okay.
I think that SmartThings has some good things going for it, but it's more expensive for a lot of the same stuff.
That's funny because I basically made the same evaluation, but I went SmartThings.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because they both look really great. Because I'm looking at the product page, like it's almost all the same stuff, a lot of the same integrations, and the Echo does interface with SmartThings. That's like the only thing I have that it interfaces with. I mean, that's the problem I have. So I have amazing Wi-Fi thermostats that I bought 4 years ago, and I think they were 150 a piece. They were a lot less than Nest, and they do this cool stuff like geofencing, so that when my wife and I, when both of our phones are outside the house, it switches to away. Nest finally got that feature. Like, they were just really good Wi-Fi thermostats, but of course nobody supports them. And then my SmartThing lights work, but my security system, nobody hooks into that. There's some half-baked code that you can sort of hook into SmartThings that I spent, I don't know, 10 hours on, and I spent money on it, and nothing works. Right. That was one of the things. Oh, and then I use a music service. I use Apple Music, which the Amazon Echo doesn't support. Right. So that's why I didn't buy one.
Yeah. So, and I think that's one of the other big misses in all of this home automation stuff is that the promises that they make and the dream that they sell for what home automation is great if you're a single person. Mm-hmm. Like you mentioned both your phones being out of the house and setting it to away. I thought it would be great for geofencing around my house. So as I pull down my street, my garage automatically opens. That's what I'm using the Wemo Maker for. Yeah. And so it can trigger to open or close my garage door, but garage doors aren't smart enough. So all I'm really doing is sending a signal to it to say, do the thing. And if it's open, then it closes. And if it closes,
do the opposite of, it's basically, you're basically saying do the opposite of what you are right now.
Yeah. So that's actually the project that I'm building. And you actually have to have another sensor then to detect what state is it in.
Right. Ugh. And there isn't a good one that ties into the entire ecosystem that I built around Amazon Echo, If This Then That, and Wemo. There isn't a sensor that plugs into any of that stuff, at least not effectively. I'm sure I could rig something up on my own, but just off the shelf, there isn't one. And I feel like that's a huge miss. So what I did is I had an old webcam sitting around, and I mounted it in my garage, and I can check that from my phone, so I can open up the webcam app and see if the garage is open, and then if it is, I can close it. Sitting in bed, or if I'm on a beach someplace and forgot to close my garage, I can do that. But the problem with that is that this geofencing and all this other stuff would be super cool if I knew that the garage was always going to be left in the state I left it. But my wife and my children open and close the garage, and so that's all I need is to pull around the corner only to see the garage closing. That doesn't solve the problem for me.
So I'm going to save everybody a lot of time and money here. If you go to smarthome.com, basically my tip of the day, I guess, is to, if you want any kind of sensors, go out there, and what you can do is you can buy security system sensors. And the great thing is security systems, every sensor that they make that's not wireless is basically an open closed contact. Okay. So if you want to know if a door is open or closed, a window, a garage, my house, even though I have no automation, is actually completely outfitted with all this stuff, and it's dirt cheap. So like they have amazing garage door sensors. So both my garage doors actually know if they're open or closed. I don't do anything with the information, but my security system knows that, and I can actually I actually have a panel next to me that I turned it off because it was making the dog bark, but it will actually talk and say garage doors open, and it'll do all that kind of stuff. So those sensors, I want to say for the garage, they were like $10-15, and those are the more expensive ones. So it's, just monitoring whether or not the one thing is near the other one. But it's just an open closed contact. So if you have a way of reading that, a lot of your problems are solved. Every single door in my house has one of those on it. The house is fully wired for that, cool. which is pretty slick. And the sensors for the doors, I want to say are like $4. These sensors are not expensive if you're able to wire them. If you're going wireless, then it becomes this whole other issue. But I went the really simple approach. So, Carl, for your project there, I know like Clarksell.
In fact, one of those, I think like the third thing, if you do a search for a garage door sensor, like the third one is the one I have for my project.
So awesome. So I remember like Clarksell a couple of years ago, he was talking about, he's like, oh yeah, he's all these pictures. He's like, we made this thing for my garage door and it took us a day. I'm like, you can buy that for $10. And he's like, Well, that's not the point.
Right.
Well, sure, that's not the point in what you were trying to do, but I suspect, like, had you known that you could buy that for $10, you wouldn't have fabricated it.
Right.
Because, you'd rather do like the programming and the automation parts of that. So that's just a tip for you, is to buy the security system sensors.
That's very cool. I'll have to spend some time on there.
Yeah, yeah. And see, what I was trying to do, I was trying to bridge my security system actually knows everything that's happening in my house. And I have motion sensors everywhere. Like, it knows when people are in rooms and all that kind of stuff. But the security system, like, it's all on like this board from, I don't know, from like 15 years ago, right? And they've just never updated. They just stamp these things out. And so what I did, it will send out serial commands based on activity around your house. So I bought this little Ethernet interface that will read the serial commands, and it'll actually, I can call an API, or there's an API where it like push to me like everything. And I had it working like in a terminal window. It'll sit there anytime anything happens in the house, like blink, 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 blink.
It's like Fiddler for your house.
Yeah, it's like Fiddler for your house. Exactly.
That's cool.
And then I was like, I just got to hook this up to smart things. And I lost my mind because, like some of the numbers, because of the way the serial communication worked, it was just really confusing trying to figure out what sensor was what. And I just gave up. So I don't use any of this stuff. I mean, the only security I actually use in my house is that I have like cameras everywhere and they're always recording, or they record when there's motion. So I'm just counting, like, if I get robbed, that they can hunt down the person that stole my stuff.
Right.
So. Okay, so let's see, where are we at? So we talked about if this then that, which is very cool. We talked about Wemo, smart things. We talked about sensors. Anything else as it relates to home automation?
I mean, I think that's been most of it for me. I wish that as I look around these ecosystems, I mean, I think everybody's just trying to do kind of the bare minimum, right? Everybody's got a smart light bulb now, and some basic things like power outlets and light switches, but I don't understand yet why I have to have a whole new ecosystem or a whole new device every single time I want to do something new. I mean, it seems to me we're in a day and age where when I'm sitting in front of my television in my family room and my doorbell rings, in the corner of the screen, without having to buy a whole system, I should be able to see who's at the door.
Yes.
Right? I mean, that should just be a thing everyone can do.
Have the technology.
Right. It's not that I don't want to go to the door, but it's 95% chance it's my son's friend. Yeah. So why don't I just say, Miles, go to the door? I don't want to I don't want my 7-year-old going to the door for anybody. Yeah. But when I know 95% of the time it's that kid across the street, just go. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I don't have to stop watching Game of Thrones or whatever the thing I was doing. So I think that's the thing that drives my wife the most crazy about all this home automation stuff. I mean, what you've heard me talk about so far is I don't have to get out of my warm bed to close the garage. I don't have to go downstairs to turn a light off. Like, this is just enabling the laziest people on earth.
I know, and it's half-assed, and it's a pain. It's a pain to set up.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm all for enabling laziness, but it's got to be cool and easy and affordable, and I don't feel like it's any of those things yet.
No, it's like you have the triangle, and normally you pick 2, but you get to pick 0 right now.
Right.
You see that triangle? Like, you know what the triangle looks like. It's got 3 corners, but you don't get any of them.
Right. I mean, and it is neat. I mean, it's very cool to be able to turn a light switch off without having to go to the light switch. But right now, I just feel so slothy doing it. Like, I could have just walked downstairs.
Yeah, literally the only automation, and I'll show you since we have video now, there's this lamp on my desk here. If it's after 4, there's a sensor on my bookshelf there. You probably can't see it. It's like right there, that little white thing right there. Mm-hmm. That sensor, if it sees me moving, will turn on my lamp. That's the only automation in my entire house. And if I'm playing like Agario or something, like I usually sit really still and it turns off and I have to like move around to get it to turn back on.
Oh, that's funny.
Were you going to say something earlier, Carl?
Yeah, I was looking at some of the other Wemo things, and some of them, like and some of them seemed like out of place. But when you had mentioned things that are like actually useful instead of enabling laziness, they got stuff like a crock pot. And I was thinking, there's been times where we've been at sporting events for the kids. These are like all day tournaments, and we threw something in the crock pot, and now we realized, they won. And they have another game that we weren't anticipating. That's going to be 2 additional hours till we get home. It would be nice to be able to turn it down or turn it off, so it doesn't ruin the food.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
the problem with that is I have to go buy a brand new crock pot.
Yeah, and not only that, but it's $130, whereas 1, I have my crock pot, and 2, it was like $30.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's why I think a company like Samsung, I mean, they said that all their products are going to be IoT enabled, and that helps because for them to say that means that every product for them, at least, I'm sure they're going to gouge everybody, but for them at least, it's 5 cents extra for every product. I mean, that's the reality of it, because as long as they have a commitment to it, you take that giant number that it costs to outfit everything, you divide it by the billions of products that they make, and it's like 5 cents for each thing. And then the other thing is just interoperability. And these companies, we had Josh Holmes on a while back, and he called it cookie licking, and I love that. He's like, all these companies are doing cookie licking. They want to like have, oh, I licked the cookie, like it's mine. I own automation here. Like, not, I can talk, your phone can talk to this lock, but if you come to us and kiss the ring, maybe we'll let you integrate with that. And it's like, that is not going to fly. No. The home of the future, when we figure this out, I just, hopefully I'm not wrong on this, but it's got to be like everything just being as open as humanly possible, talking to each other. And I know that's the approach that Microsoft has taken. And I think that's the only way to win.
I think that will be the final end game, but we may be 10 years from that.
No,
so let's flip this on its head for a second. Because speaking of Josh Holmes, Josh and I are friends with another person named Jim Holmes, who's one of the guys that originated CodeMash and a few other things. But he had an interesting tweet related to IoT the other day, which was, IoT is just someone else's computer sitting on your network. And it's really interesting to think about it that way, because as you look at what was the device that Google had just acquired, and then they just shut it down. But it was it
was like Revo or something,
but shutting it down, that's fine. And the parallel someone used for that was, imagine you bought a tractor from John Deere and you'd been mowing your lawn with it for 2 years, and then one day they just come out with a trash compactor and destroy it because you're not allowed to use it anymore. That's basically what Google did with this product. It wasn't that they're going to stop their services. It was that everything about that ecosystem is done. And that is another scary part to this whole Wemo and SmartThings and everything else, is that if they decide they don't want to do it anymore, how at their mercy am I? Does all my stuff stop working? I'd hope not. I'd hope that they're just talking directly to my Wi-Fi, and that I'm not actually going through some kind of Belkin web service that if they shut that down, none of my stuff works anymore.
Well, I'm sure you are today. But unplug your router and find out.
What about the security aspects of that, though? I mean, they have their own firmware sitting on a device that has access to your home network.
Well, that's kind of that's like a big discussion that we should probably have like Clemens Vasters, because he can talk about that for an hour. Like, that is I don't want to say it's a solvable problem, but I know people have like thought I was crazy when I said this, but like, you already have this problem. Like this is not new. Like, we have computers, right?
Yep.
Are computers secure? I would say no.
No,
everybody
but
uses them, and they make the world better.
There's the illusion with your computer that you control what's on it, to some extent.
But the point that I'm trying to make is like, over time we've figured out how to improve things. Now, there's obviously still like major issues, but like, companies like Microsoft and other companies have figured out how to deliver, secure software. At Microsoft, there's this whole SDLC or whatever, the secure development lifecycle. I don't know what the heck it stands for, but it's a complete end-to-end process and rules that you have to follow and checks and balances to deliver as secure software as you can, while remaining in business. I mean, obviously you could take billions of dollars and like make it marginally better, but it's like, a process for improving this whole thing. And it's worked. Like, we are talking on a computer right now. Our lives are not ending. Computers run medical equipment in hospitals and things like that. So in IoT, there have been a whole bunch of really bad examples, but of course I can go create a new operating system and give you a horrible computer that can kill you, but that doesn't mean that all those things are bad. So I see kind of the light at the end of the tunnel. Well, that's like death.
Right.
Well, I don't know. I see the good at the end of the tunnel where, and again, Clemens Vasters talks about this all the time, but like, if you are very disciplined in this, and it's going to take, I think it's going to take a lot of big companies to come up with the infrastructure and to get this whole thing kind of pushed in the future, and then everybody follows these rules, and they follow certain patterns, and they can live within their sandbox, and then it becomes less of a security concern. It will always be a security concern, but we just have to minimize it.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I'm the guy that's got this stuff rigged up all over my house, so it's not as if these concerns are bothering me.
Yeah, I've been watching you on your camera.
Perfect.
Yeah, there was an article recently. It was talking like with the director of the FBI has like the tape over his webcam. Right. Oh, anyway, so one last thing, and then we should probably move on. There's an article I'm going to put in the show notes, and honestly, like it's super super long. So I like skim through it. I need to go back and like I want to spend like some quality time like reading this thing, because this guy goes through and he talks about a lot of the IoT things we're talking about and how it needs to be like at a different layer. And I think a lot of it aligns with things that I've talked about before, like the concept of presence. So we talked about your phone geofencing, but I've always talked in the past about how let's say I have a newer car. I'm guessing Tesla, they must have like a GPS, and they're probably transmitting coordinates or something, right? So they have, the car knows its location. Your phone, it knows what your approximate location is. Your, I don't know what, all these different devices. I have motion sensors in my house, your Nest thermostat. You can name a million things. Heck, even the camera on your computer and the microphone, like not even talking about like communicating with the internet, but like my camera sees me right now. My camera, if it had any intelligence whatsoever, would say, Jason is sitting in front of me right now. Yep. So imagine having all those sensors available to you and having it say, well, Jason's car isn't here. His phone, for whatever reasons, at the neighbor's house. But I am sensing motion in the office, and his camera sees him. So all those things need to work together and say, Jason is here, and guess what? He's in his office. And then use that abstraction for doing things, for realizing like where I am. And if I had a Connect in this room, that could be another input. And if the camera didn't see me, then maybe my presence status changes, because it's taking all these things, it's aggregating this other layer.
But it's that aggregation of all the sensors that is the gold. And we are so far from that, and it kills me.
Yeah, they do it. Actually, you can do it in like industrial manufacturing, but in the home, it's not even close.
No.
Okay, should we move on?
Yep.
Okay. What do we got next here? I don't have any picks of the week. What do you got for a dev tip of the week?
So I just wanted to call out, once again, since this is Evolve is happening, that Xamarin made good on some of the promises at Build at opening up their source code. So if you go to open.xamarin.com, you can actually check out the source code for Xamarin Forms, Xamarin.Android, and Xamarin.iOS. And if you want to, you can check it out. And apparently one of the tidbits of information is Xamarin.Forms in Visual Studio now, the actual renderer that will, do all the IntelliSense and displaying the information is the same XAML renderer that WPF uses. Oh. So it's just kind of interesting that that code is so closely related that it's being reused.
Okay. I love reuse. Okay, so Jeff, pick a number between 1 and 4, inclusive.
4.
4. Okay, here we go. There's the question. I'm going to read it, though. So people know it's like a real game. This is the first time ever on video that the game has been on video. Would you rather have your entire room be pink or wear only pink clothes?
I'll handle the pink room. That'd be fine. I can leave the room.
Yeah. What's wrong with pink, Jeff?
No, there's nothing wrong with pink. But if we're making it a bad thing, I think that I would rather just have my room be pink. That would be just fine.
Yeah. Okay, Carl, what number do you want?
I'll take number 3.
Number 3? Would you rather accidentally get 2 broken legs at the same time, whoops, or accidentally get 1 broken leg and 1 broken arm at the same time?
I would have to go with 2 broken legs. You can at least get a wheelchair, and arms are way more useful, at least for typing and stuff like that. So I can at least still do my job.
You can't really walk with 1 leg. So I think that's a good call. And look, I have a marker now. On the video feed, see, they're getting all this extra information. You can see the marker. You can see I crossed off the numbers. So we finally won't have duplicate questions for the first time ever. Okay, Jeff, where can people find you?
I'm on Twitter at Jeff Blankenburg. I'm on the web at jeffblankenburg.com. Pretty much Jeff Blankenburg everywhere. You'll find me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and I just saw your note that you have to leave in the next 6 minutes, and that was like 7 minutes ago.
It was 4 minutes ago, yes.
And Carl, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Carl Schweitzer.
And you can find me on Twitter at twitter.com/ytechie. And don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube. So, Jeff, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about magic wands and home automation.
Certainly.